What's good, y'all? I wanted to continue this live because I was midstream, mid thought, and unfortunately the internet cut out. And there's a very significant chance, since nothing has been done from tech support on my end, that there's a chance this live will also cut out at some point. But I do want to complete my thought. And if at some point you see that spinny little wheel going, please note that the live is over. And unfortunately, I can't say anything. I do find it ironic that during this, media day in which basically a team owned by a telecommunication company goes through closing thoughts on a season, that ultimately the biggest story is not just the great vibes of the team, which are immaculate, not the growth of the young players, not all the incredible progress that this group made, how they stayed together. That should be the story. That really should be the story. Instead, the story right now is some snippy comments by the media regarding Scottie Barnes and Jonathan Mobo and stuff. So I want to let y'all know 100% that I did screen record it before they deleted it, that I will go in to my bag. I am a film editor. They messed with the wrong guy on this one. I'm a film editor and I'm also, I also have a lot of friends who work in audio. So we'll be able to bring up some of those frequencies. We'll be able to really, really go through each word very easily, decipher who said what. And if there's something truly, truly horrible in there, I know it sounds really bad right now, but I think a lot of it was pretty innocent compared to some of the stuff that I have already heard these people say privately, the things that I've heard them say, which are not recorded off the record conversations that I've had, emails that I've received from people. I already know how these people feel, and I've been telling you all this for years. But cool. Damn, the whole last live is gone. Was gonna watch that later. I apologize. Basically, it is me reacting, to the individual interviews with Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, and Jamal Shed. We did not get all the way through the Grady part. We didn't get to RJ. We didn't get to Emmanuel quickly, and I don't want to take that chance to I don't want to take the chance to start playing that video and then end up midstream. But I do want to say just my closing thoughts on the year. And if I could cut off, I could cut off, and that's going to be the end of it. And this video will also go into private. I promise you, this video is also going into private. So this is really just for the people who catch it live. I just want to say I am incredibly proud of this team. I am incredibly proud of this team. I'm incredibly proud of the scouting department, the medical department, the training staff, the coaches. I've had a chance to meet a few of these people, and they're really wonderful people who have really come in from Jama Malalela to Ivo Simovic to Darko Rajakovic to even Pat Delaney. Right? We a lot of us said Pat Delaney needs to be fired. I said it. I said Pat Delaney needs to be fired because look at their defense, and he comes from the Wizards, and the Wizards aren't very good. And look, now he's in the Raptors, and we're not very good. And the 29th ranked defense. I mean, look, man, the defense got a lot better. And I think this entire season, I called it earlier. I said it was like playing with a weighted vest, right? Every single player was playing VR missions. That you have certain situations where you're asking players to go out and do things that are very uncomfortable for them. You're asking players to do things on the court that 100% are conducive to losing, and that will lead to losing. Some of the pressure stuff without the rim protection, some of the high pickup points without the requisite lateral quickness. You can't just ask anybody to guard full court. You can't just ask Grady Dick to be pressuring on Jalen Green and expect that that's ever going to go well, especially if you're not going to double and you're not going to help him. But I think what the Raptors did this year was a process. I think it was a process of not only development, but also evaluation. I think the incredible part about this is now you have a much greater idea of where Scottie can be on the court. I think what you saw the last couple of games, really just going right back to that Charlotte game that we attended, Vince and I attended, to the Dallas game, to like really the last 9, 10, the last 10 quarters of basketball he played, he pretty much averaged like 30 a game, right? And so when you think about that, I think what I saw from him in those quarters was not just a player trying to close out the season strong, but rather what I saw was a player who was just playing without the restrictions, right? He wasn't playing with this pre pre-scripted, okay, we're gonna score 10 times in the post. We're gonna go for 6 left-handed hooks today. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I said it in the last live as well. It's really hard to play basketball that way. It's really hard to play basketball that way. I think the development is real. I think it's remains to be seen how good some of these players that we're very excited will be. Will Ochai Agbaji blossom into like a real high rotation player? Will Jakob Poeltl become a sub all-star? Will Grady Dick, fully actualize himself as one of the best movement shooters in the league? Will Ulrich become what I project him to become, this kind of two-way force who can hit jump shots and hit threes? Will Jonathan Mobo become a poor man's or even a fair man's Draymond Green? Will he continue to work on that shot? Will Jamal Shed carve himself out as one of the better backup point guards in the NBA? Will Scottie Barnes, will Scottie become a superstar? Will Brandon Ingram become an all-star again? Will RJ Barrett continue to progress on the defensive end as he did? Will Emmanuel quickly regain his form and perhaps become a high volume 3-point shooter who shoots it at like 41%? Can these things all happen? Sure. Will they all happen? Probably not. But there's a really good chance that they'll all move in a positive direction this summer. I think this team will be very connected this summer. I've heard already, from people close to the team that there's a lot of big plans for the young players this summer. I've talked to trainers privately about various players on this team that they're working with and what their plans are, and everything feels like it's hitting right. It's in the right place. Everybody is leaving this season, a season in which you lost 52 games. That should be the mood. The mood should be terrible, but the mood is not terrible. The mood is deeply optimistic. I thought one of the most telling parts was in Jamal Shed's interview where he said, we have these winning habits. Like we do winning things, right? Even if we're not winning, we're doing winning things. And, winning things are communicating. I mentioned this in the last live, communicating, addressing problems as they come up, addressing them in a healthy way, showing up on time, working hard. Darko Rajakovic said earlier in the season that, there's 3 pillars to success. You got to learn how to practice, you got to learn how to play, and then you got to learn how to win. I think the Raptors did all 3 this year. I think you learned how to practice, right? You learned how to bring that intensity in practice. According to sources, Scottie has been the hardest worker in practice, the most intense guy, the loudest guy in practice. And there's a reason. He has taken the leadership of this team by the balls. He's taken it, whether people think he was gifted it unfairly or prematurely or whatever. It was bestowed upon him. And unlike last year, he's owning it. He's taken the requisite steps to become not only the leader of this team in the locker room, but also on the court, on the defensive end. And his selflessness means that he probably doesn't mind being the 3rd leading scorer on this team. Next year, he probably could be the 3rd leading scorer on this team and still be the best player on this team. There's a world in which Scottie Barnes averages 21 points per game next year with 9 assists and 8.5 rebounds, leads a very, very competitive effort on the offensive end. Do you know how many times Magic Johnson was the 3rd leading scorer on his team? I don't mean for an entire season, but I just mean like where he would average 19 or 20 and rack up the assists and really orchestrate the offense and be the main cog, but Kareem would have more points and James Worthy would have more points. It's not required. Klay Thompson scored a hell of a lot more points than Draymond Green. I don't think at any point Klay was more important than Draymond Green. You can help your team in a lot of different ways. And I think the most important thing for young players like Jamison Battle, Jakob Poeltl, Jamal Shed, Jonathan Mobo is to understand more than likely you're not going to be a star at this level. You might be. I don't want to sell anyone short. You might be. Who's to say? No one thought Jalen Brunson was going to be a star. No one thought, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to be a star, or Kawhi was going to be a star. I mean, shit. Kawhi became a star, and they still called him a system player. So, look, Recruiter Dude, I really appreciate you doing that, man. Just want to give you your flowers, Rob, for the coverage this season from all of us. Thank you. Looking forward to next year. I am also looking forward to next year. Saw a lot of comments in my mentions yesterday saying, like, I can't wait for the season to be over. Thank God it's over. My God, I found this season to be quite enjoyable. The basketball was not great. This season was a disaster. I don't think so. You're definitely entitled to your opinion. And, knowing you and speaking to you over the years, I didn't expect you to say anything else. But I don't think it was a disaster at all. I think it was beautiful. I think it was beautiful to watch this team stay connected. And, again, I mentioned it in the last live, and I'll say it here for the people who maybe missed that last live and probably won't get to watch it because it is private now, that winning solves a lot of things. It masks over a lot of things. Losing does the exact opposite. It exposes things. If you have contentious relationships or bad relationships in your locker room, a three-game losing streak is going to make you completely erupt. And it's the same thing with winning. If you have a contentious relationship or maybe a strained relationship between a player and a coach, a three-game winning streak is going to mask the stench. I've always considered winning to be kind of like putting newspaper on shit. If it's shit, it's shit. It's at some point, championship organizations, teams that consistently do well in the playoffs, don't implode, don't self implode, don't have leaky locker rooms and loose lips. These teams handle business a certain way. And, again, the leadership structure of different teams is different. Jokic doesn't lead the way Magic led, and Magic doesn't lead the way Michael led, but there's no right way to do it. But there is a consistent theme through teams that do it well. And the teams that do it well handle their business on and off the court. They stay together. And it really helps that you've just brought in really good people. I mean, you can feel it, right? You can definitely feel it. I mean, you'd have to be crazy not to. You can certainly feel when Jakob Poeltl is speaking that this is probably the type of person that you wouldn't mind playing video games with, or you wouldn't mind hanging with, or you wouldn't mind, going through a 3-hour grueling practice with, because he's not a heavy person. He's not a bad person. He's not a snippy person. He's a humble person. He's not braggadocious. He's not arrogant. He's just humble. What Jamal said about it doesn't matter what I want to work on. It's what coach wants to work on. He's one of your leaders. He's a rookie, but he's one of your leaders, right? Garrett Temple has taught that man well, but also his parents have taught him well. I don't want to give the Raptors credit for making these young men exceptional people. They were exceptional people long before they got here. But all of that makes this so much easier to root for. And all of this makes it so much easier for me to project their success going forward. I would much rather root for a 44-win team that plays together and plays the right way and genuinely enjoys each other's company and is respectful to the community and to the fans and, goes out there and plays hard. I would much rather support a 44-win team that does that as opposed to a 55-win team that just falls ass backwards into talent and plays horrible basketball and self-implodes and underachieves. There's something to be said about a team that's supposed to win 41 that wins 48 because of camaraderie and chemistry and success and grit and diving for loose balls. You root for that team. That's why I'm rooting for the Pistons, because they're overachievers, because they've exceeded the limits of their talent and they're doing it through togetherness and grit. I appreciate teams like that. Say what you will about the OKC Thunder. The talent on that team definitely puts them into contention, but there's nothing about the talent on that team that would tell you they should have the most historic net rating. That's grit. The OKC Thunder are all about grit. They're all about togetherness. They're all about team culture. They're all about, listening to coach and executing the game plan. This is the purest form of basketball. This is what I love about basketball. It's what I've always loved about basketball. So Gregory saying, yes, big thanks for the season. Appreciate you, Greg. Appreciate both of you, actually. Recruiter Dude, Greg, shout outs to Pepper Jack, shout outs to Leanne, shout outs to Godeology, shout outs to all the super chatters and people who, drop e-transfers and all that stuff. I didn't put the e-transfer link in this video because I don't know, I was lazy about it. But I appreciate all of y'all, man. Like even the lights, the fact that the video quality has gotten so much better on this channel is because of you guys. The e-transfers help pay for the camera. The light was a gift, right? This Rode mic stand was a gift. There's so many things that I'm so thankful for to this community. But most importantly, I just want to thank you for bearing with me. I'm not a member of the Raptors, but before the internet bugs out again, let me just make this my exit interview as well. I wanna thank you guys for putting up with me. I'm not the easiest person. I'm not Jamal Shed and Scottie Barnes and Jonathan Mobo. I don't necessarily exude that goodness all the time. I can be petty. I can be a crash out. I can be a lot of things. Somebody I posted on X. I posted that clip on X, and I said, "Don't worry, there will be receipts, and there will be a transcript coming out tomorrow." And I meant it. I meant it. There will be. I'll work on it, and we'll see what comes of it. I could be a crash out. I can be, a little bit emotional. I wear my heart on my sleeve. When someone said, it's kind of crazy that you're calling out bias because you're biased. You have this huge bias for Scottie. It's not just a bias for Scottie, man. I have a good bias. I have a bias towards great basketball. I have a bias towards selfless players. It's why I support Shea. It's why I support Scottie. It's why I support this team. It's why I'm such an advocate for guys like Jamal Shed and Jakobi Walter and Jonathan Mobo. And because I know what these guys are about, and that's what I'm about. I appreciate that, but I'm not nearly as smooth around the edges, and I realize that it's not doing me any favors. That this channel could probably be twice as big if I wasn't such an objectionable personality. But when I read that comment about the bias, it's like kind of weird that you're calling out the media for having a bias when you have a bias. I think what it affirmed for me was I own my bias. I've never made any secrets of where my allegiance stands. I've never made any secrets of the fact that I'm a huge fan of Masai Ujiri and that you will rarely, if ever, hear me say anything bad about him. I'll call out his mistakes, but I'll still respect the man, respect what he's about, respect the ethos and the character with which he carries himself. Darko Rajakovic, you can certainly question the lineup sometimes and the challenges and all that stuff, but I'm never going to question the dude. Like, I've heard so much about the guy. I know so many people who know him, and I have such a tremendous amount of respect for him and how he's handled this very, very difficult job that he's been handed. So why would I, so I think I remember saying to myself when I read that bias thing, it's like, Lord knows I'm never saying anything in private. You're not going to catch me on a hot mic saying some shit about RJ Barrett that I wouldn't say on a live. I say everything, like say sometimes people say like, oh, he said the inside thought out loud. I don't have inside thoughts that I don't speak out loud. That's sort of my gift and my curse, is I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And I've called out Scottie plenty of times on this channel. Y'all remember this. I mean, the haters don't want to really talk about it, but yeah, I've gone on extended rants about how he needs to dial up the pressure and how he needs to be a lot better next year. And if he wants to be great, he's gonna have to chase it a little bit harder. And I think he knows that. It's good to hear him say that he wanted to be more physical in his presser. It's good to hear him say that the shooting is, a woeful thing. He finishes the year averaging 27.2 points percent from three. That's not great. That's not great, man. You were at 33% last year, so we need to dial it up. How do we get to 36%? How do we get to 37%? How do we get to 38%? Don't dismiss it as a possibility. Don't be like, well, if he just shoots 30%, he's shooting 30% north of 30% on his career. Again, when he came out of FSU, if I told you for 4 years that the end result would be 30%, you probably would have envisioned it being like 22, 27, 30, 33. Just because a guy makes a leap before you're ready doesn't mean it always has to go one way. Sometimes people take a little bit of a leap, it shows you who they are, and then they stagnate. They real life progression. And again, to anyone who's ever progressed in anything, it's not linear. It's not linear. I'm a filmmaker. My first film was a lot better than my second film, which was a lot better than my third film. My fourth film was better than my fifth and sixth films. What does that say? Does that say it's ebbs and flows, or does that say that's just kind of a cyclical part of process? It is a part of process. There's a very good chance that, a filmmaker makes their best film is their first film. And then every film after that is worse until they break through with their 16th film and then their 17th film as a masterpiece. So what happens? What do you do? You just say they fell off for 15 straight films, or were they working through a process? It's the same thing with Scottie Barnes. This is a guy came out one rookie of the year, second year kind of stumbled, flatlined a little bit. But again, if the first year was like 5 points per game, the second year would be like the greatest thing you've ever seen. It's the way we look at progress as this sort of linear map that kind of freaks, it doesn't go like this. I mean, Darko said this in his introductory press conference. It's not going to be 15, 20, 25, 30. It doesn't work like this. It works like this for some players. It doesn't work like this for all players. And for a player who does as much as Scottie Barnes, sometimes you're going to see a step back in certain regards, but you're going to see a step up in certain regards. But the whole thing matters. The off-court stuff, the leadership stuff, the speaking to the media part, articulating, communicating with his teammates on the court, finding productive ways to channel that energy in a way that other people can actually receive it, knowing that he went through an experience where he didn't have the greatest leaders coming up in his first few years, and he saw what they did wrong and what they did right. I'm sure he can take pieces and bits and pieces of all of it. You can be approachable like OG, you can be a hard worker like Pascal, you can be a media ringmaster like Fred VanVleet and kind of play people like a puppet a little bit. There's good and bad to everybody. Nobody's all bad or all good. And I think Scottie has had a great deal of exposure to all these different situations. Again, super different than someone like, I don't know, Jalen Green or Cade Cunningham, who've really not had a ton of experience doing different things at the NBA level. They've only had experience doing one thing, which is being themselves. And we saw, over the last, I'm going to say 10 to 12, 10, 11 quarters that he's played basketball for this team, that he was just given the free reign to kind of freestyle. And when you give Scottie freestyle, he's a very good player. For year one, very, very uncomplicated role, just freestyle, right? When all bets are off and he can just kind of do what he wants, that's when he's at his best. But that doesn't mean that's for the best. You see, being at your best is not necessarily for the best. Sometimes you need to struggle. Sometimes I need to put you in the corner so that you can see what you need to work on. Sometimes I need to put you into 12 ball screens as a screener, one game, and then flip it on you and put you as the ball handler just to show you where your gaps are. Sometimes I need to put you in lineups where you don't have any help. I'll remind you that for the first 35 games of last year, where he put up a 6.2, 6.3 box plus minus and shooting 39%, you can look at Dennis Schroeder, who's a competent level player, OG Anunoby as his third option, Pascal as his first, as his second option, because Scottie was scoring more than Pascal at that time, and Jakob Poeltl as a stabilizing center. But please understand, there's still a gap between Jakob Poeltl and the actual top 10 centers. There's a big gap between Jakob Poeltl defensively and offensively. Jakob versus Jared Allen. Jakob versus even, Miles Turner, Nikola Vucevic, Nikola Jokic, Bam Adebayo. Let's not act like he was playing with superstars. He was playing with competent NBA players, right? Off the bench, he had Gary Trent. But what were those lineups looking like for Scottie? Malachi Flynn, Jalen McDaniels. Really? Malachi Flynn, Jalen McDaniels, Grady, who couldn't shoot, was shooting like 20% from the three. That's who he was playing with. And he was carrying those lineups. And he still put up a 6.2 box plus minus. I believe that last year he was fully capable of putting up like an 8 box plus minus for the entire season. I really believe that. Maybe somewhere between 5 and 8 if you put the right pieces around him. So again, people want to compare Scottie to Evan Mobley or Cade Cunningham or whatever. Okay, so I'll ask. If Scottie Barnes had the following teammates: Max Strus, Ty Jerome, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert for half the season, right? Donovan Mitchell. You consider the talent. If he had one shooter as good as Sam Merrill, do you know what I mean? Like all that spacing, all that shooting, all that defense. If he had one defender on his team, one perimeter defender as good as Isaac Okoro, I'm not even trying to gas up the Cleveland Cavaliers as like some sort of super team. They're not. But you'd be crazy if you think that wouldn't help him. If you just put him in place of Evan Mobley right now, he's a better player. In my opinion, he's a better player. He's a very different player, but he's a better player. He'd be a better passer, better connector. I think he's a better offensive player overall than Evan Mobley, although he's taken very many strides. So again, it's the context. You judge the player without the full evaluation of the context. And his shooting is hurting his teammates too. His lack of gravity as a shooter, obviously, is making RJ less efficient. But it's interesting to note, I want you to do something for me, right? Again, in theory, it should make RJ more inefficient. Do me a favor and look at RJ's percentages in games that he played with Scottie. Look at his numbers in games that he played with Scottie versus his numbers in games he played without Scottie. Your face will drop. You won't believe it. Basketball is a team sport. We try to hyper individualize it because we want to look at the individual impact. We want to compare my player versus your player. Who's better, whatever. Jordan versus LeBron, Scottie versus Cade, Evan Mobley versus Franz, Paolo versus Chet. We want to do these comparisons. But the truth is, it's never going to be a one-for-one swap because Paolo does not play with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Chet Holmgren does not have the primacy of a Paolo Banchero. You can only hypothesize. You can play 2K. You can swap them in 2K. You can do that. But the truth is that it's really difficult to isolate individuals in a team dynamic. And so, it's sort of frustrating. I've talked about it at length yesterday, so I won't relitigate the entire thing to hear how Raptor fans talk about Scottie Barnes. But you know what? I'll say this and then I'll end it. I said Pascal wasn't a superstar. I said Fred wasn't a good leader. I said Gary Trent Jr. is not a good defender. I said that I wanted Malachi. I didn't think Malachi Flynn was an NBA player. I have said numerous times that I wouldn't mind trading this player and that player. I've also said I wouldn't mind trading RJ Barrett. The people who are super fans of those players probably hated every time I said one of those things. So, is it okay that you're a Raptor fan and you don't necessarily believe that Scottie Barnes is going to be some sort of superstar? It's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. But in order to maintain your perspective, don't lie, right? When you say he hasn't earned it, being an all-star and being a rookie of the year prior to the age of 23 is a really big deal. There aren't a lot of players who've done it. In fact, if you can think of 10 players in NBA history, not Raptors franchise, history. There have been a lot of max contracts and a lot of money dished out by this organization, okay? Kyle Lowry didn't do that. Siakam didn't do that. Rookie of the year plus all-stars. Like Vince and Scottie, that's really about it. That's pretty much it. Chris Bosh was not rookie of the year, but still, he became an all-star around the same age. Tracy McGrady, like you're really talking about Hall of Famers. Really, like when you're talking about Scottie, like comparables, it's all Hall of Famers. Whether you want to compare him to Magic, whether you want to compare him to Giannis, whether you want to compare him to Kawhi or whatever. But some people feel hellbound on comparing him to Kyle Anderson, and I just think for y'all, it's kind of weird. It's a weird energy. I'll say this: yesterday, Scottie put up 35, 11, and 8. You know, big scoring night. And a lot of people were very, very quick to dismiss it because it doesn't count because it's against the tanking Spurs. I'll remind you that those tanking Spurs won 4 straight games, right? Oren is calling this a police state and defending the media's comments. What a joke. Yeah, he is interesting fellow, but police state is weird as hell. You don't know that a mic was on. You were being recorded. You're Does anyone find it really interesting? One of the first things they teach you in media training, I mean, it's not one of the first things, but it's definitely a part of it, is check if the microphone is on. You know, you'll see a lot of players when they're on the bench do this. They'll speak like this so that nobody can make out what they're saying. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed sometimes people will put their hand on a mic and step away from it so that no one can hear what they're saying? You've noticed that, right? That's part of media training. Knowing that a microphone is on in the room that you're speaking in is a part of media training. I'm not even saying that they said something so flagrant or so offensive. I understand that, you know, yeah. I'm just saying, isn't it kind of ironic to be saying that Scottie's not media trained and yet you make a gaffe like that and become the subject of a viral tweet? Call me biased, but I find it strange that we live in a world, surveillance state, where reporters are blamed for not knowing a hot mic recording is recording every word instead of the organization. So the organization has to protect you. Listen, let me just say this. And frankly, any of these people can call into any show anytime. We'll have a respectful as fuck conversation. There are some good people in the media. I want to say that. I don't think Kayla Gray is saying like snippy bullshit because she's a real one. You know, she's a real one. You can tell, right? But some of these people really do come from like a very privileged world, a really privileged world, man. And again, you got to understand the messenger. I'm a person who grew up very differently than a lot of these people. I have very different sensibilities, different attitudes towards a lot of things. And so for me, privilege is you had 2 parents in a backyard. Like to me, that's privilege. Maybe for you, privilege is, you know, a 4-story house and a fucking yacht. Like, I don't know what you consider privilege. To me, hot water, warm food, roof over your head, you were never homeless, you fucking blessed. So for me, like when you kind of come, like these people probably don't know how Scottie grew up. They probably don't know Jonathan Mobo's story. They probably don't know a lot about Jakob Poeltl or Jamal Shed. They don't understand the struggles that a lot of these players have gone through or the different perspectives or experiences that they've had or how hard they've had to work to get here. There are not a lot of charmed life people on this team. I'll tell you that much right now. Whether you're talking Darko Rajakovic, I'll tell you a story about Darko Rajakovic that he shared himself, where, I think he was in Europe and he really, really wanted to, you know, uh, go and treat this coach that he really admired for dinner. I hope I'm not misquoting the story. And basically, he had to go to his wife Gaga and basically say that in order to go to this restaurant, because again, even in Serbia, there are like some expensive as fuck places, and in Europe, there are like some places where it's going to be like $200, $300 a meal, but you have to get there in order to have this meeting, and you want to be the nice person. So in order to extend your career, you gotta enter a room that you're not financially prepared to enter, and bite bite the bullet, right? That's like somebody saying like I gotta friggin' get one of these club memberships for $10,000 a year when I barely have money for food. But sometimes you got to do it for your career, and Darko chased it. And I think he mentioned something along the lines, if I'm remembering the story correctly, that basically had to choose between rent that month and going to this dinner. And I don't think a lot of these people who've lived these very charmed, privileged lives will ever understand having to choose between your career and whether or not your family is going to eat well for the next month. But these players do. And, Darko comes from that world. And so he identifies and he understands. And what's kind of funny is when you don't understand things, you judge them and you diminish them and you call them stupid and you call them, ignorant or unpolished or whatever, because it threatens your worldview. If I say something that you don't agree with on a basketball thing, you're going to probably get on your high horse and call me stupid. That's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. So, yeah, I mean, again, charmed lives, cottages, two parents, millions of dollars, paid for educations. You will never understand. You'll never understand homelessness. You'll never understand having to leave your parents, to afford a better life. You'll never understand that shit. And real see real. I've always said that. I say real see real all the time, right? I'm not a Darko fan. Hmm, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Again, we don't have to agree on everything. Just keep it respectful. You're keeping it respectful. I keep it respectful. We know each other going back, a few years. That's cool. You don't have to be a fan of Darko. And believe it or not, you don't have to be a fan of Scottie Barnes. For us to agree, you don't have to be a fan of Scottie Barnes. You have to be a fan of Grady. You have to be a fan of Ulrich. You don't have to be a fan of any of these people. I don't care, man. Some of my best friends don't agree with me on Scottie Barnes. Some of my very close confidants within the basketball world think that Scottie Barnes is probably best suited to be a second option or a third option on a good team. A lot of them see him as Aaron Gordon plus plus. Some of them see him as never going to be a primary. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. We can agree. We can agree that he has a lot of work to do, but keep it respectful. I don't have to be an idiot in order for you to be right. You don't have to be an idiot for me to be right. But if you're an idiot, you're an idiot. The conclusion is irrelevant. If you arrive to the conclusion that Scottie Barnes is not a primary initiator because you look at his handle and you look at, how he gets to his spots, and you just determine based on the percentages that it's just not efficient and it's never going to be efficient, then that's a perfectly reasonable line of logic. If you extend it beyond that and you start looking at numbers you clearly can't extrapolate, looking at numbers you clearly don't understand, misjudging data, misquoting data in order to force feed yourself an opinion that you want to hold. I mean, I was kind of on a train of thought and I lost my train of thought. The game against Portland, sorry, the game against the Spurs yesterday. Need I remind you that this Spurs team is the reason that the Golden State Warriors missed the playoffs? Can I remind you of that? Because that's true. That happened. That Harrison Barnes game winner sank the Golden State Warriors playoff shot. The Golden State Warriors are in the play-in right now because this allegedly tanking team beat them. And this version of this team is the same version that you just faced, that you were beating by 20. Does that mean anything? You played the Golden State Warriors down to the wire and then tanked the game right at the end. Does that not mean anything? Scottie Barnes performed really well in that game. Does that mean anything? I think here's where the bias really shows up. Here's really where the bias shows up. You don't want to give Scotty flowers for having 35 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists against the Spurs. Perfectly fine. On a night where Jaime Jaquez scored 41 points. Who cares? Right? But let me ask you a question. Go and check the accounts. The same person saying this is no big deal were the same people saying he scored 8 points against this really trash team. He can't even score double digits. So which is it? When I tell you that doesn't matter, I'm also not telling you that 35 points against this team is a sign that he's a superstar. I just said that he played a really good game, and he did. Played really well defensively, played really well offensively, gave you a very diverse range of skills. It's not like just transition dunks. But like seriously, think about what I'm saying. If it doesn't matter when it doesn't when it when it when it supports your viewpoint, it matters. When it doesn't support your viewpoint, it doesn't matter. So what would you say about people like that? Right? What would you say about people like that? Where the guy scores 8 points, you're like, oh my God, I know we're tanking, but come on, man. You can't score 5 points. You can't score 8 points. This is a bum. But then when the same player goes out and scores 35, you don't want to give him any credit because it's against a tanking team. The season's already lost. It doesn't matter. So it's like, well, it didn't matter. Do you see what I mean? The bias is palpable. It's weird to me. And again, that's my point. When Pascal Siakam played well, played within the offense, when Fred VanVleet bought in, I always give him credit. I keep it a buck. I always keep it a buck. Do y'all remember how many slings and arrows came my way where after a win I would criticize a Pascal performance or a Fred performance, and people just lost their minds? They're like, "Oh my God, Pansari is not a real Raptor fan, just a Scottie stan, because you can't even be happy in a win." Do you see what all those fake wins led to? It led to the denigration, the disintegration of your entire team culture and your locker room, and that's what I was seeing, and that's what I was calling out the entire time. I'm not reinventing history. Go back and check the receipts. That's what I said. That's what I said. Amiss said, I think the issue is how you are biased and downplay and discredit others, but Scottie always seems to have a pass. See, again, people build consensus for what they already believe. If you already believe this, nothing I'm going to say right now is going to change your mind. So sometimes speaking to people who are already committed to one version of you. So let me assume that you're not someone who's closed-minded. Open your mind and let's answer some questions honestly. Have I handed a lot of credit to RJ Barrett for his defensive improvement? How many times have I brought that up? Right? Have I called Scottie out for dialing in and out of games and called him unassertive and said he needs to be better, that he can't have these, sinky performances where he floats in and out of games? Yes. Have I credited Scottie for his growth as a leader this year? 100%. Yes, I have. But I've also extended plenty of credit to Ulrich for how well he leads in, how well he's developed, how well he asks questions, and how well he practices. I've extended a lot of credit to Jamal Shed for what a great job he's done, for Brandon Ingram for how well he's assimilated, you know what I mean? Like into the locker room. And it's not just about Scottie, but again, if you walk into this channel with like, oh, this is a Scottie Glaze channel, or this is a channel that hates everyone, Scottie, I mean, that's what you're gonna see. But man, if you follow me on socials, you see these accusations and they're not true. I've probably shouted out Jonathan Mobo, Jamal Shed, and Jakob Poeltl more than I've shouted out Scottie Barnes this year. If I do talk about Scottie at any point, it's largely because the conversation on him becomes too negative, and I feel a need to counterbalance it. Nevertheless, you are the second person to tell me this week. Pressure builds diamonds, to be honest. I love it. The whole team going crazy this summer. Completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. Cool. Rose saying Darko is a brilliant coach. You just have to hear it from the coaches he worked with, players he worked with. I agree. Chosen saying, come on, or fears. Come on. Yeah, so we'll do some more draft eval as the month goes on. We'll certainly do a couple of 2K, summer sims. We'll do that for sure. That's what's coming your way. I remain extremely high on a lot of players. In fact, I'm gonna share something with y'all that I shared last night. I went on a bit of a tweet storm last night, not in a bad way, but had a lot of thoughts and had a lot of stuff that I wanted to say. But let me just show y'all something real quick, just in case you don't follow us on X, or you've deleted X because of Elon or whatever. Here we go. So, oh, this post is going hella viral. Oops. Sorry. This is not gonna make me fr and honestly, I thought the media was kinda chilling on me a little bit. I felt like the energy kinda shift in some of the emails that I've been getting, but, like, after this, they're gonna be so mad. It's all good. Okay, so here are my Raptor targets. This is a board of 47 players that I think you should familiarize yourself with. I have always believed that a community based on dialogue is better than a community based on monologue. And so I will just say that these are the players that I would like to discuss on this channel more than other players. They are 47 players. Some of them may go back to school, some of them may already have gone back to school. I'll have to double check it. But these are the players that I've looked at. These are the players that I'm looking at that fit Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster's descriptor of players who play two-way, players who play with grit, players who want to win, players who are high character guys. This is what I know. Okay. So in terms of the high lotto guys, it's Cooper Flag, Kaman Malawach, Dylan Harper, BJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey. In terms of mid lotto guys, guys that I expect to go somewhere between, let's say the Raptors range 7 to 12, 7 to 13, 7 to 14. Carter Bryant, Con Knipple, Colin Murray Boyles, Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Noah Assange, and Jace Richardson. Mid to late lotto, or sorry, mid to late first is Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown, Ace Newell, Hugo Gonzalez, Rasheer Fleming, who I'm really getting higher on. Like his progression as a shooter, his volume, his three-point shooting. I am just very, very impressed with Rasheer Fleming. He has a rumored 7'4" wingspan. He's a 3-year player. He's not that old. Like I think he's 21, or he's going to be 21 around the draft, if I'm not mistaken. So Rasheer Fleming is really like a player that's really caught my eye as a legit 6'9" utility forward who could maybe do a little bit of Tamani Kamara stuff. I do think Carter Bryant is the better prospect, just to be clear, but Rasheer has already like shown a lot of progression, and you've sort of seen it throughout 3 years. So when you evaluate a freshman versus a junior, you got to sort of fill in the gaps that the freshman hasn't filled in for himself. And that's what the Raptors do well, I think. So they could probably look at Scottie, compare him to a guy who's 3 years ahead of him, and just say, where do we think this guy would be a couple of years from now? And then just make the move to get the guy when he's younger. Granted, there's a trade-off, right? If you get Rasheer Fleming, maybe he's more ready, right? But those 2 years or year and a half difference between those two players, they're going to live those out anyway. And so what you try to do when you're trying to draft evaluate is you're trying to get the guy who's going to be the best player at 26. It doesn't matter if you get him at 23 and you think you're going to fast track it and he's already done so much work for himself and you just need to ticket, or you get a guy at 18 where you're like, okay, we have 5 years of work to do with this guy in our program, but we believe by 23 we're going to turn him into an all-star. And I think you just need to project what those outcomes look like. So those are some names: Thomas Sorber, Azen Newell, Rasheer Fleming, Walter Clayton Jr., Yaxel Landeberg, Ben Seraph, Noah Penda. Second round guys: Sergio Delaria. I haven't watched film on him except for like a couple of highlights, but he's next on my list. Alex Caravan, Adu Tiro, Joan Behringer, Janai Broom, Bay Dongo, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Isaiah Evans, Dink Pate, Rocco Sikorsky, Chad Baker Mazzara, Alex Condon, Andrei Stojakovic, Joseph Tugler, and Sion James, despite his terrible, terrible finish to the season. And then the undrafted guys: Baba Miller, Jameer Watkins, Dylan Caldwell, Mackenzie Mbako. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Trevon Brazil, Julian Reese, Avdalas, Niklas Avdalas from Greece, Mate Biddle, Aaron Bradshaw, Miles Kelly, Malik Dia, and Xavier Lee. So Canadian guy. So those are the players that sort of fit the mold of players that I think we should probably look at. If any of those names seem interesting to you, maybe what you want to do is, for our next call-in show, the best thing to do would be you do a little bit of research on this guy so that we can have more insightful conversations, so you can push back a little bit and say, yeah, I know that you think Rasheer Fleming's shot is better, but here's why I don't think it's going to translate to the NBA level. This percentage, that percentage, this number, that number. And if, I mean, again, we're trying to build better basketball minds here. We're not just trying to have a basketball mind talk to a whole bunch of brainless people. No, we're like the best version of this community is where we're all knowledgeable, where we can all push back. And the best version of this community is where I'm not the only person bringing the facts, like where you can bring the facts and we can have dialogue and discussion and maybe even debate and argue. That's the best version of this community. I've always believed that y'all are here for yourselves as much as you're here for me. And I've always believed that. Like I realized that very early, and that actually makes me a lot calmer. Because actually one of the most intimidating parts of doing this is that you sometimes think that it's about you, that you get on the microphone, you're the person that people are like, oh, I want to hear what Rob has to say about this or that or whatever. But the truth is that when I'm watching this back, I'm curious to hear what Sean has to say, or what James has to say, or what Chosen has to say, or what Greg has to say, or what Tetrahedron has to say, or what Recruiter Dude has to say, or what Vince or Coach Mo are going to say when they call in, or what FA has to say. Again, build better communities, get a better product, right? Build better communities, get better dialogue, we'll get better calling shows. I know for a fact that a lot of people checked out of this season. So a lot of people are going to be hitting refresh this summer and then be coming back next year. My goal for next year, honestly, is to have 600 to 1,000 people in every post game live. I'm going to make damn sure that I work very hard this summer to make sure that I'm the type of podcaster that can handle that type of volume in terms of, pressure, trolls, all that stuff, grow myself as a person. But I also want to make sure that it's worth it, that we're offering something unique through the film breakdowns, get better with it, get better organized, get the lives out sooner, as opposed to the delay that we've been on, right? Crush the competition. This is a competitive game. There's only so many Raptor fans. There's only so much of an audience. I'm very aware that there is increased competition in this space from various other podcasters. And just like Scottie looks at Kay Cunningham and LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo and says, y'all are food. Same way, I'm going to keep that same energy towards the podcast game and work very, very hard this summer to become better spoken, a better communicator, a better orator, and better at my job. I am working exceptionally hard this summer to learn as much as humanly possible about every one of these draft picks so I can give you the most informed live draft show. I don't want to be like those pseudo experts up there going on 3 notes, right? This is an athletic forward, struggle shooting the 3, very turnover prone, exceptional wingspan. Like, I don't want to go on bullet points. I don't want to be repeating the same bullshit. I want to come up with fresh perspectives. I want to come up with actual evaluation. I want to have a clear understanding of every one of these prospects. And I want to take this very seriously because draft evaluation is one of my deepest passions going back to when I was a kid. I can remember, watching the Syracuse tape of Carmelo Anthony, projecting how he would look next to Vince Carter and what kind of player he would be and what kind of career he's going to have. This is like the coolest thing for me. And so this community has given me a lot. Thank you, Raps416, the 699 super chat. Appreciate the content, bro. Keep doing you. Appreciate y'all. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Rogers for not cutting me off mid live. Got my point off. 48 minutes of rambling. Not a coherent thought presented, but hopefully it was an interesting listen. I have a final thing to say, which is just about next season, this summer. Pieces will move. Trades will be made. You'd be very, very foolish to assume that trades will not be made, that this roster will just be coming back with just the 7th overall pick or the 3rd overall pick or whatever we get. More likely 8th overall pick, to be honest, but sure. You'd be foolish to think that the only changes to this roster are going to be like, 2 draft picks coming in. No, there's going to be some maneuvering, maybe some trades that are going to happen. I wouldn't pencil the starting lineup in. I understand that might be the intention right now, but intentions change as opportunities open. And I think plenty of opportunities are going to open for the Raptors. And I don't think you make that Brandon Ingram move if you don't believe in Scottie Barnes full force. To be honest, I don't. A lot of people have seen it as an admission from the Raptors front office that they know now that Scottie can't be a number 1. Bro, they didn't trade for Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker. They didn't part out with 18 picks. They opportunistically took a player who does stuff that no other player on your team can do, which is specifically score in isolation really well. And they signed him. They didn't bring in a 22-year-old to make him the franchise player. Like, they brought in a guy who's about to be 28, who has a very, very serious injury history to support what you're doing here. And I believe that the Raptors are going to drastically change the way Brandon Ingram approaches the game. I think they're going to change the way he plays. I think they're going to make him more efficient, and he's already pretty efficient, but they're going to make him more efficient. I think they're going to change the zones in which he attacks the game. I think they're going to make him a smarter player. You know, we heard a lot in his exit interview about how he's imagining himself out there, how he's thinking the game, and he's a real student of the game. He's a real sicko, a real junkie, a real film nerd. Remember Mike Malone saying like, "Oh, I don't know, we don't watch film." Well, a lot of players on this team watch film, and I think that just overall being around BI will be very, very good for Scottie. I think the ways in which Brandon can sort of show him the tricks of the trade, if you will, of scoring in isolation, and I think he'll make him better. And I don't think Brandon Ingram came in here with an attitude or an ego to say like, "This is my team now." Like, I think the established pecking order is already established. We all know whose team it is. We all know who the last guy to be introduced is, and I think it probably is a huge, huge vote of confidence for Scottie that Brandon Ingram sees him as the leader of this team, because BI is legitimately someone that he really respects. And I think everyone on this team, from RJ to IQ, respect Brandon Ingram. He hung 40 plus on him. Like, they know what this guy is. They know how good he is. They know how talented he is. Understand that these kids, you know, we're talking IQ, we're talking RJ, all these guys. They grew up looking at Brandon Ingram like he was the man. Okay. When you get hyped to hell, like BI did in high school, you go to Duke, you're on the main stage, you're a top 3 pick. Like, you come with an audience. And now you're in the locker room with that audience, with the 16, 17-year-old who was looking up to you, trying to copy your moves. You're in the locker room with that guy. There's a certain gravity that comes with that. There's a certain respect that comes with that. And I just think that it's a really great thing that he's here. I hope he's healthy. I hope Grady gets stronger. I know Jacoby's going to get stronger. I know Jacoby's going to come back a completely different animal. And I love that how much he fell in love with defense this year. I think it's going to be great for him. So overall, I would take the over on 45 wins next year. Easy. Easy over. Remember that? You know, easy over. And I think when you prepare right now, you know, Scottie said no excuses next year. You know, our starting 5 is going to be so great, whatever. That's belief. That's belief. That's a real ball knower, a real hoop knower looking around his locker room and saying, "Holy shit, we have a chance to be good." It's the same conversation that Kawhi had with Kyle Lowry. He looked around the locker room, saw Serge Ibaka, saw Danny Green, saw the ingredients, and said, "Oh shit, we actually have a chance." Everybody knows when you have a chance. You want to assume that everyone goes to every single tournament and thinks they can win the whole thing. Very few people actually believe that truly. They all say it. Very few people believe it. I believe Scottie Barnes is looking around at the progression of his younger players. I think the young players are looking at themselves. We heard Jacoby and Jamal sort of echo that sentiment of like finding out that, having that sort of light click on of like, "Oh shit, we actually belong here. We can do this." That's a huge thing. Most importantly, and this is something that I've said at least 12 times on this channel, that draft pick is going to come into a blessed situation. Obviously, the Raptors have to do their due diligence to make sure that they're bringing the right character, the right type of player who's willing to buy into the system. But you're doing yourself a great, great service here by creating this culture, because people actually want to come here. These draft picks are going to ball out for you in the workouts, and they're going to like really message your agent and say, "I really hope Toronto picks me," right? That's what you want. That's what you want. Whether you get the right guy or not, whether the right guy goes 2 picks early, you want everyone to have that feeling of like, "I hope Toronto is the team that picks me." And damn, looking at the lottery, you definitely hope Toronto is one of the teams that picks you. It's a great city. So again, the vibes going into next season, immaculate. The coaching staff really progressed. I'll be curious to see if there are some changes to Darko's coaching staff this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in maybe one more hand, whether he does it or they do it for him. It would be interesting to see if that is done. And yeah, look forward to next season, man. Look forward to summer. Look forward to the draft. Look forward to the draft lottery. Draft lottery is May 12th. The draft itself is in June. So we're going to have, and then, you know, a couple days, couple weeks, I think a couple days after the draft, boom, we go right into summer league. And we're going to be seeing Jacoby and, you know, Jamal and this, you know, high lottery pick balling out. And you're going to see Scottie Barnes, and, you know, he's going to have 5.5 to 6 months. People forget, when you don't make the playoffs and you don't have a summer national team commitment, like Scottie does not have that. What he has is his first summer as a father, right? Where he'll, fully have that time with his daughter, and he's going to have some time to, spend some time with family, get his body right, get himself healed. But now also, like, this is a guy who really loves basketball. So now he's going to have 5.5 to 6 months to prepare for the next season. No long playoff run, no, going into the season injured. And so half your offseason is rehab. Everyone's going into the offseason, touch wood, healthy. Even Grady will recover, I'm sure. Jacoby will recover like within a couple of days, and they'll have that they'll have that summer. And I think the Raptors are very, very committed. I think the entire modus operandi this entire season was next year. It's not procrastination. This is reality. There was steps that needed to be taken this year so that next year could go as well as it will. So again, not saying next year can't blow up in their faces. Obviously, there's a really big prize at the top of the draft. There's actually I would say three players that could easily be first overall picks in Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, and AJ DeBonsa. These are like three legit franchise type players, and they're sitting at the top of the draft. So it's like, if you end up bad next year, I'm not going to be crying, but I don't think you're going to be bad. I think you're going to be good. And if I'm the Raptors, every single trade that is pitched to me this offseason by a team that's currently under 500, I'll give you whatever the fuck you want. Give me an unprotected pick. 2026 unprotected is what I'm after, right? Loading up on that 2026 draft would be very smart for the Raptors. Again, if you finish in the plan and there's actual serious progress and your young players play, I don't care, but anything worse than that, I think. With all the tanking that's going on this season, I don't think you've seen anything yet. The NBA better step in and intervene, because next year is about to be like the worst movie you've ever seen in your lives. Promise you. It's going to be bad. Raptors need to make some trade because they can't afford everyone. This is true. This is true. This is true. Yeah, I'm gonna log on Twitter and check out all this bullshit afterwards. But yeah, I'm sure they hate me even more today than they did yesterday, which I didn't think was probably possible. But hey, I'm sure the players appreciate it. Sure, the players appreciate it. I know the players don't hate me. That's good. This certainly could happen. This certainly could happen, man. RJ Grady. Actually, hang on. I wanna share something with y'all. So this is dub accountability, okay? I wanted to take you through very briefly my best and worst basketball takes, and start with the worst. And hopefully, my internet doesn't get cut off, but kind of rounding it out to an hour. So, best and worst basketball takes. Let's start with the misses. Otto Porter, the best signing in Raptors history. Oops. Jonte Porter will stick around. I said he was the best decision they made that year. That was a flop. Said Walker Kessler draft grade. I believe I gave it an F or a D. It was bad. Christian Brown draft grade. Yikes, not good. I said Jabari Smith at the draft was better than Paolo Banchero. That did not work out. Last year, I said Trey Murphy I'd take Trey Murphy over Cade Cunningham, because at least he can fill a role on a good team. That was wrong. I also said I would take Alperen Sengun over Cade, but I didn't include that there. I was pretty high on AJ Griffin, to the point where I was willing to part away a lot. I was shocked to see him traded to the Rockets for a second round pick and then have him retire basically from the NBA. Onyeka Okongwu, upside projection, I really, really gave some very huge props to Onyeka, saying he could be a permanent fixture on the second team defensive team or whatever. I said Joe Wieskamp will stick around in the NBA. I really liked his jump shot, really dug into him deep, thought he was going to be really good. Thaddeus Young, I said, is a good trade. It's a good trade. You get a serviceable vet. He's great for the locker room. He's a good guy. I feel like I was wrong on all of that. And I started to feel some way when that Scottie and him beef started. That was weird. Precious Achiuwa will figure out basketball IQ. I remember definitely made a video about that got like 15,000 views, saying he could be special and he has the most potential in the team and athletically, blah, 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 blah. If it puts it together, that was pretty bad. I sold my Josh Giddey and Kobe White stock last summer. That was a really, really bad time to sell that stock. Should have been buying it. Decided to sell it instead. My bad. I said the Kalel Ware would be a walking bust. I was really, really low on him in the 2024 draft cycle, and That was not true. Said Christian Coloco will become a starter level impact defender. Was very, very sad to see him go. Nice to see him getting some minutes yesterday, but yikes, that did not look. He just has not progressed offensively the way I thought he would. Prior to Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks hitting free agency, I said that they will not get contracts. In fact, I'm sugarcoating that a little bit. I said they'd be playing in China, and I was wrong. They both got huge contracts. Perhaps, a little bit of Scottie fandom got in the way, and I said Quentin Grimes is a bum. I said it on the panel that, he wasn't a very good player, and this year he's proven to be quite a good player. I said that Ryan Rupert was the 13th best prospect in his draft class. I should have said Tamani Kamara, same damn draft class, but nope, I was wrong. Keontae George, haterade. Look, I'm still not sold on Keontae George, but I think I was being a little bit too far. Okay. Patrick Williams will turn it around. I've said this many times that I think Patrick Williams will turn it around, and I'm selling. And you know what? Maybe next year me selling will be the wrong take because he'll turn it around, but I just haven't seen the progression that I needed. I did say this summer that I thought that Toronto would seriously explore bringing back OG Anunoby in free agency, and I also said that Toronto will trade for Cam Johnson. Both were wrong. Okay, so in terms of takes and predictions, those are the things that were wrong. I do want to go through also what I think I've been right about. This is a very long list, so bear with me. I haven't included everything. It's just the most of it. Malachi Flynn is not an NBA player. Got called a lot of things for saying that. I was right. Scottie Barnes, so the Raptors see Scottie as better than Jalen Suggs. I said this on the To The Point podcast in April 2021. Denny Avdija will break out. So that in 2023. I often, when we were looking at Pascal Siakam trade opportunities and stuff, I really explored trading him to the Washington Wizards, and primarily on a package centered on Kristaps Porzingis. Denny Avdija identified Kristaps' rim defense was just getting so much better. Took a huge turn after the Dallas stint, and I just was very, very high on Kristaps turning around his career, and I think he has. Health be damned. Pascal Siakam is not a franchise number one. Said that numerous times. Got a lot of hate for it. Raptors will choose Barnes as a franchise over Siakam if forced. This was considered blasphemous in 2022, but proved to be very much true. Scottie will win Rookie of the Year. Said this in December of 2021. Scottie will be an all-star. I actually said this in May of 2021. Scottie Barnes does not have work ethic issues. I said this for an entire year, 2 years ago. Raptors' toxic culture is eroding morale. James Welsh, if you're still here, James was literally running the Facebook group in which I pretty much posted this shit every second day. I was dissecting Fred VanVleet stuff. I was drawing a lot of ire from his family and supporters and childhood friends from, Wichita State and shit like that. People coming at me pretty hard on that one, but proved to be quite correct. Scottie Barnes now. The Raptors' toxic culture is eroding morale. Scoot Henderson isn't a bust. I said this on the panel, and I said this in November before he turned it around. Jabari Smith will turn it around. I said this last summer when I was exploring for ways the Raptors could possibly trade for him. I said Bilal Coulibaly would be a lottery pick in January of 2023. This was way before people were saying he's a first-round pick. I was seeing him mocked in the second round, and I just saw his tape, and I was like, this is a lottery pick, and lo and behold, he goes number 7. Dyson Daniels better than Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey, May 2022. So right around a month before the draft, when Dyson was mocked as a second-round pick in that draft coming out of the G League Ignite. I said Dennis Schroeder won't stick around for long in Toronto. Really dissected his bad vibes. I said Jalen Suggs is not a bust. When I suggested the Raptors should trade Fred VanVleet for Jalen Suggs, I had spent a year dissecting why Jalen Suggs was so bad, but when he turned it around and really changed his role, I found him to be very, very good player, and I believe I was right about that. At the draft in 2023, I said Peyton Watson, or 2022, I think I said Peyton Watson deserves to be top 22, even though he averaged like 3 points per game at UCLA. I just saw great potential in his movement patterns. I said Gary Trent Jr. is a bad defender, 2021, 2022. I said that on Raptors Digest, and a lot of people hated me for saying it, but it was true. Norman Powell is way better than Gary Trent Jr. Said this when I dissected the trade in 2021 on Facebook. OG Anunoby is more valuable trade asset than Pascal Siakam. I think based on the return that you got for those two players and the market that was available, I think that proves to be true. My free Jeff Doughton movement was based on the fact that Jeff was not only better than Malachi Flynn, but that he would be a pro in this league. And most people said he'd be, washed and in China. Well, Jeff is balling. So right about that. Yuta Watanabe is better than Bo Cruz. I said the Raptors, would regret making that swap, and Yuta Watanabe went on to average like 50% from three for the next half season before retiring. Kevin Herter and Bogdan Bogdanovic will turn it around in new situations. If you remember all of our trade shows, I very often tried to trade Bruce Brown for Kevin Herter, said he was in a bad situation, said he was going to turn around. Well, we're watching Kevin Herter in Chicago, and he's been much better. I said the Raptors were not invested long term in Davion Mitchell, as the media was trying to tell us that they're going to bring him back for $10 million. We remember that, right? Do we need to bring up video receipts, or we all remember that? I said Jamal Shed was better than Davion Mitchell long term. I said this in preseason. Okay, I said this in preseason. I have the receipts. Davion will struggle to find the next contract if he doesn't shoot plus 37% from three. Well, clearly he got the message. And even though Davion and I really, really did not agree on a lot of things and had a lot of heated exchanges on socials, I have nothing but respect for the great job that Davion Mitchell has done, not only in his last little bit here, but also in Miami. I think he's fully saved his career. And you know what? My whole thing in that video was not that Davion Mitchell would not be an NBA player next year. I said, if he does not turn around the shooting, he will not be an NBA player. And he's shooting north of 40% from three. So he has turned around the shooting. He's been great. I said Sasha Vezenkov will do the Raptors a favor or stick around due to a pre-existing relationships. Yes, I mentioned that he had a relationship with Darko Rajakovic, that the two had done a speaking engagement together. There was probably some conversation that he's had with Darko, and I speculated that the Raptors trading for Sasha Vezenkov was a bit of a wink-wink deal. I said Darko will change the team culture when he was hired. I said Darko and Scottie will become close allies and good friends. Now they're basically inseparable. I said Jama back to Toronto following the Nurse firing. That's a little bit disingenuous because I alluded to the fact that he would come back as a head coach, but I feel it kind of funny that I sort of spoke that one into existence a little bit, because he came back as a lead assistant. I said Nurse will flame out in Philly. I mean, honestly, people there, I can call this one wrong. I was positive he'd be fired after the season, and yesterday just heard that he won't be fired. So we'll see what the rest of the offseason brings, but there's a lot of coaches that are available right now. They owe him a lot of money, but it's nice to see that him and Daryl Morey will be back next season, as they pretty much just they pretty much just said this season was up to injuries. I said Casey will flame out in Detroit. I mean, he didn't really flame out, but he didn't work out long term, and they did not do well. I said the Halliburton trade will work out in Indiana's favor long term. I think that is pretty much holding true. No matter how good Domantas Sabonis is, I do think that Indiana won that trade. I said Minnesota won the cat trade. Now I put a little question mark to that. I don't know if that's entirely true, but I think there's a really strong case to say that that's true, because they saved not only the huge money on the cat deal, they got one of the best contracts in the NBA in Dante DiVincenzo, but also, depending on what that next Julius Randle deal looks like, they might have just, exchanged a huge contract for two very, very serviceable contracts. So we'll see. I definitely said Detroit is way better than people think. We'll turn it around next season. I said this amidst their horrific losing streak. I have written 2023 amidst losing streak there. Yeah, I think that was 2023 going into 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it 2024? I don't remember the exact date, but I definitely made a video saying, like, chill on the Detroit Pistons. They're not the worst team in the league. Ben Mathurin is the wrong pick at 6. I really hated that pick, and I hope that if the Sixers can look back on it, they would probably have rather picked Dyson Daniels, given their dire need for defense, or even Shaden Sharp. Like, I don't think Ben's been good. Keon Ellis is special. I saw him in the G League. I, immediately when I was on, I believe I was on with the Kings podcaster that I know, and I said, I think Keon Ellis is going to be very, very special for you guys. Whoever trades for Jimmy Butler will thank God they did. I said this on the panel multiple times. I said Jimmy is just saving it, and that ultimately the next situation he's going to turn it around, and he did. Warriors won't regret letting Clay leave. I said this, and Lowe and I got into a very heated debate about this, and he was arguing that, like, oh my God, the Warriors will never be the same. Their culture will be destroyed. Their finances will be destroyed, whatever the fuck he said. He was wrong. The Warriors are very happy that Clay left, I'm sure, and they are doing just fine. Wemby will be an MVP candidate by year 2. Said this in 2023. Fred VanVleet will leave Toronto for Houston. I said this 3 days before the official news, and I actually made a reel about it, which is published. Luka will be a Laker. Likes LA Fit. I said this 2 days before the official news on the panel, as Swiper and I were talking about, whether or not Luka will leave, and he was saying, like, he would want to go to Chicago, and I said nope, he'll go to LA. Again, video proof is there. said Brandon Ingram loves Toronto, would welcome a move to Toronto. I said this a week before the trade in a live. I also said SGA is having an all-time guard season well before this was accepted gospel. I said Jakob Poeltl will be a way better playmaker at the NBA level than he was at Baylor. I said this in August. I said Kem Birch deal was a massive overpay. Kyle to Miami was a done deal in April. And the Vince Carter jersey to be retired 3 days before the official report. Those are my greatest hits and my greatest failures. Here are some pending picks. OKC to the finals. We'll see. I have some thoughts about, how the Knicks might fare, how, if I'm looking at the West, there's like 5 teams that I'm really looking at like, ooh, they could be really good. And then there's 3, 4 teams that I'm looking at like, I don't have any faith. Among the teams that I have a lot of faith in, the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, potentially, depending on, how they're feeling right now with their new coach, the Lakers, and I could say definitely the OKC Thunder, right? In the Eastern Conference, it's probably closer to 3 teams, but are we all sleeping a little too much on Indiana? We'll see. So Scottie Barnes, All NBA between the next 2 years. I think he'll make it. Carter Bryant, lottery pick 2025. Again, not a widely held belief, but I believe when teams get him in the gym, they will fall in love with him, and I think that he fits the mold of guys like Scottie Barnes, Dyson Daniels that I just really like, and I just know that when people get to know him, when they have a dinner with him, when they exchange, like they're just going to be like, okay, I get it. Perfect. It is a people business, and who you are as a person really matters in terms of that draft stuff. Like there's just certain people that turn people against them. And I'm a person that turns people against me all the time. Every time I talk, I probably get like 2 new haters. So I understand. I appreciate people who don't do that. Raptors 45 wins next season. A I don't think that's a wildly popular take right now, but I think very soon it'll seem like a no-brainer. And RJ Barrett or Grady Dick probably traded this summer. Now, there's a part of me that just kind of hopes that I'm wrong about that, but I don't think I am. They will make a trade this summer, whether it's Ochai, whether it's Grady, whether it's RJ, whether it's Emmanuel Quickly, whether it's Yak. It'll have to be somebody because again, this team is not going to luxury tax territory for this. So we will see. How come Jeff on a 2-way still? We'll see. We'll see. Doesn't matter. Still an NBA pro, still making NBA money, and he's balling. You should check his numbers over the last, I would say 25 games. He's been great. Great, great, great. And his percentages are awesome. Over the last 2 years, he's been one of the top 250 best players in the league. That's a huge, huge win for a team, for a league that employs 450 players. So why is Jeff the way that he is? Why is he treated the way that he is? Why did the Raptors kind of lose him? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. He's a very quiet dude. He's a very humble dude. And sometimes I think people take advantage of that. But I'm praying for Jeff to get his big bag this summer. I hope that some team sees the potential in him as a backup guard who has great defensive instincts and, brings him in at a 3-year, $14 million type of deal. I'm gonna cry for him, like, because I know how hard he works. And, as y'all know, I know his trainer, Brian Inge, and just very good people, man. Very, very good people, very hardworking, never complained, never bitched, never took side swipes at the Raptors, for cutting him loose and stuff like that. So, props to him. He's a really good dude. Hope he catches on. I hope people can learn to appreciate him. Anyways, I'm out. Thank you so much. And I apologize again for all the technical difficulties. And I apologize, for not being able to get to the final 2 interviews. Hopefully y'all were able to check it out on the Raptors YouTube channel. And, I'll go on X and check what all this controversy is about. But certainly, we will transcribe that video. We did record it, did screen record 6 minutes of that conversation. And again, I'll reiterate, I don't think anything too egregious was said. But I think what was said is a nice indication to you of the conversations people are willing to have in public. Again, ask yourself the question, right? If you're willing to say this in public, you're willing to say this in front of Raptors PR, in front of a room full of people who, let's assume most of whom you know, but some of whom you don't know, that are your brothers in brothers in arms with the media or whatever the hell they are. You're willing to say this, and the guy left the room 2 seconds ago. 2 seconds ago, they started talking shit. Like he leaves the room, the second they see him leave, boom, they start talking, right? So if you're willing to talk like this, what are you saying in your private chats? What are you saying in your living room? What are you saying about Scottie? That's kind of my point. That's kind of my point. Of course not, because they have to meet these players, and a lot of what they like. I can tell you 100%, there ain't no player on this team currently that is ever going to say Pensar basketball is hating on them unnecessarily, other than maybe Chris Boucher. That's it. That's the only player. There's nothing I'm going to say to these players. And maybe RJ Barrett, if he checks out some of our content, I have no idea. I have no idea. But all these young kids, from Ulrich to Jacoby to Jonathan Mobo to Jamal Shed to Jacoby Walter to Jamison Battle to Scottie Barnes to Grady Dick, all of them have seen nothing but support from our end, and they're going to get nothing but support. And don't even let me hear you try to insinuate that I would say anything about these guys in private that I wouldn't say in public. Everything I say to y'all is the same thing I say to my girlfriend. It's the same thing I would say to a colleague who works in the media. I'm not saying anything different. I'm not two different people, right? Facts. Colloy media is kind of lucky. Wait till shit gets audio enhanced, bro. Do you understand how far technology has come? Do you understand how easy it is to bring certain frequencies up? Like I do this shit. Like I've sound designed an entire film. Like I know how to work with this shit. Don't worry. I'll be able to remove stuff. I'll be able to bring stuff up. Don't you worry, bro. Don't you worry. I pay for the software. So we'll see. We'll see what was said. Honestly, I can barely make out half of it myself. But I'm curious because again, I've seen some of the stuff being said. I have seen some of the stuff being said, and it it's not professional. It's not professional to be discussing, you know, someone stumbling over their words or whatever. You know, you might think because again, like we kind of learn to accept what our peer group accepts. So if you're in a peer group that's racist, homophobic, you might think some of these slurs are okay. And then inadvertently, when the mic is on, you say something like that, and now everyone knows you're a fucking dummy. But your peer group never checked you because they're all like that too. Birds of a feather flock together, right? So you think making fun of somebody in the way they speak and calling it unprofessional or calling it whatever the hell they called it, that's okay. Dissecting how someone speaks. A basketball player, you want to dissect their game, that's one thing. You want to dissect their shot being funny, that's one thing. Dissecting like how they speak and talking with their attitude and stuff like that. I mean, it's very clear that that's how you felt, but it's also very interesting to hear that that's not something that you've loudly spoken on, right? So so I don't know how anyone in the world could ever meet Jonathan Mobo and assume he was anything but really smart. I'll never understand that. He is such a remarkably composed, insanely humble, very mature, very well spoken person. So I don't know if they said that. I really don't. I find it very hard to believe that anyone said that. But nevertheless, we captured it. It's there. It's stored. It's a mistake. Surely the media can say it's a mistake by, whatever. But look, man, you can hate the internet for holding people accountable because they get a little bit toxic about it. The internet certainly held me accountable, right? I pro- I promise you that's not going to happen. Oren is not losing his job. He's sufficiently connected. Will is sufficiently connected. Everyone covers for each other. Trust me. There's no chance in hell that this is going to have very much repercussion at all. What this is going to do, by the way, though, is the next time you phone up a Scottie Barnes for a sit down interview or a Jonathan Mobo for a sit down interview, you're probably not going to get the same energy, right? Yeah. Alrighty, guys. I'm gonna talk to y'all later. Thank you so much for the super chats. Appreciate you immensely. And I look forward to this off season. I look forward to next year. I can't wait. I'm a very excited Raptor fan. I hope you're excited too. And let's let this community not only be the beacon of, or, the beacon, the place for light and truth. Let it not only be, let it just be a very positive Raptors community in the summer. I would love for that to happen. I would love for us to be positive because, again, some shit has gone negative, and there's really no reason for that to happen. We are here for the Raptors. We are here to cover the Raptors. And if things are kumbaya for the Raptors, then why should anything be amiss among the fan base? There's no need for drama. There's no need for pettiness. And yeah, let's be better. Let's all be better and enjoy your days. Stay very blessed. An optimistic view. Bro, I'm nothing but optimistic. Love this team. Love the culture. Love the coach. Love the star. Love the ancillary pieces. Love the position we're in. Love the conference we play in. Love the future. Can't wait. 82-0. I mean, come on, yo. 72 wins max. Talk to y'all later. Bye.